Happy New Year and welcome to anyone who is following along with this lively, free-flowing conversation after the fact. We're so glad that you are. And let us begin with a prayer from our buddies in New Zealand. Let us pray. Oh God, it is your will to hold both heaven and earth in a single piece. Let the design of your great love shine on the waste of our wraths and sorrows, and give peace to your church, peace among nations, peace in our homes, and peace in our hearts.
Amen.
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 I love that line. Let the design of your great love shine on the waste of our wraths and sorrows. The Kiwis really know how to put words together, I find. All right. So, friends, we haven't met in a few weeks, but I believe we are at chapter 42. Is that correct? And
Yes.
unfortunately, all of my study Bibles are in my office, which I didn't go to yesterday because of the ice. So I am without benefit of my my cheat sheet, my cheat book. So I'm going to rely on you all.
Yeah. In the 41.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am, for keeping us honest. Okay, so remember where we are. Joseph has risen to power in Egypt, and his father and his brothers are still back in Canaan. And so, did anyone, do we need to go back and look at 41 again just to refresh our memories, or are we good?
We're good.
We're good. Kim's not so sure. Would someone like to just?
I know. I was like, but I'll catch up if we start
last year we had this conversation, so it's been a long time. Does anyone want to recap where we were?
John's our best recapper.
Joseph has interpreted the dreams for the Pharaoh about the 7 fat cows and the 7 thin cows. It says there's going to be a famine. The Pharaoh puts him in charge of making sure that things are done right. He has a fifth of each year's harvest. He puts away. The famines come. The people are crying out. Pharaoh says, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you to do." And he opens the grain stores, and it becomes known throughout the world that Egypt has grain.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, Joseph's not giving the grain away either, so he's making some money off. Excellent. Yes, ma'am.
But Joseph does give credit to God.
Yes, excellent.
And Pharaoh knows it. I mean, he acknowledges that where else can we find a spiritual leader like this?
Excellent. Fabulous. All right. Well, I'm thinking it would be good if someone feels up to it to read the first 3 paragraphs, which would be through verse 25, because that's really a chunk of the narrative. Would someone like to read this for us?
I'll read it if, yeah, okay, go ahead, Fred.
Is it big enough, right?
Pardon me?
Is it big enough on the screen?
Oh, yeah, it's just fine.
Okay.
I've got a big screen.
Excellent.
When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another? I've heard," he said, "that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel were among the people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came, bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Though Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them. And he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord. Your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, now with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is just as I have said to you, you are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else, as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." I got it there. And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here where you are imprisoned, and the rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, "Alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us." Then Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept, and he returned and spoke to them. And he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. This was done for them.
Thank you, Ray. I love the way you tell a story. All right.
I love a good story. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a good one.
Yeah.
What strikes you here?
I remember Reuben was so distraught to come back to the pit where they'd stashed him, and he was hoping to fish him back out and return him to the father, in spite of their all the other guys wished to kill him, but they'd already taken him out and sold him to the Ishmaelites. So Reuben's had this on his mind for some time.
Sure has.
Yeah, but didn't he want to get him back so he could get back into the good graces? I mean, it was not a
Wasn't
a
Alfred?
truly moral judgment on his part. It was
Some
more
transactional
transactional.
thinking there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So magnanimous, but yeah. And I love it. When he says, "Did I not tell you?" It's like, very
Seems like
human.
the Egyptians have a lack of competent people.
How so, Fred?
All you need to do is move to Egypt, and you're immediately put in charge of somebody's household, as long as you're not, Egyptian.
And
Well,
it's
as long as you can interpret dreams properly.
yeah.
Well, I mean, he didn't interpret dreams to become the chief of the guard's household.
Well, true.
I mean, it's just they don't seem to, the Egyptians, who seem to have, from an independent view of archaeology, been doing pretty well on their own, don't come off well in this telling.
This is, another campfire story. It's well embroidered.
I mean, Elon Musk was South African, and now he's pro-president. So,
And as I read this morning,
Yes.
aiming to be king of Europe.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, Elon, there's no stopping you. Let's just see where you're going to go with all this, right?
One thing that I noticed is in the very first paragraph there is the father seems to talk to these kids as though they are kids and that they're kind of ne'er-do-wells. And I I'm kind of reminded of the parts in the Gospels when Jesus is kind of put out with the disciples.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Why do you keep looking at one another? You cannot, I totally get that, Donna. I can hear Jesus, especially in Mark's gospel where he's always exasperated with the disciples. I definitely can hear that. That's great.
I kind of read that as you have resources of your own. You can think for yourselves. You don't need to be told what to do. Instead of standing there staring at me for leadership, why aren't you coming up with some ideas?
Mhm.
Uh, that's
Mhm.
perhaps too much of a reach.
Mm.
Oh, I don't think
No,
so.
that is really what it sounds like. They're all just sort of standing around with their thumbs in their ears, and Jacob saying, "Think of something."
Very nice, Ellie.
I'm deft.
There's grain in Egypt. Go get it. What's your problem?
Yeah,
They,
yeah,
they're
and
really,
it's not.
they're grown men and they're middle-aged.
Yeah, it's been at least how many years since Joseph left?
It's
I
been
mean,
a
it's
good
the 14 years of the famines.
Um, well,
and
Joseph at one point was 30 when he took over coming out of prison, and they're all older.
much older.
Time has gone
Okay, so
by.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's very plausible that they would not recognize him because he moved from having the look of a youth into the look of a middle-aged man. I mean,
Yeah.
how many of us looked anywhere near the same? Uh,
yeah. The last they saw him, he was 17 or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
and they think he's dead, and they totally out of context, the last thing they would expect was their little brother whom they threw in a pit to be the provider and the regent of Egypt. So yeah.
Well, and he has all the trappings and he's speaking Egyptian and he's even has an interpreter there. I mean, he truly is, continuing the disguise that
Mhm.
not easy to see through.
He's certainly having his having fun with them right now. No, 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 you are spies. I'm going to get you. And um,
Yeah, he says it
just
what, 3 times.
put the fear of God in them.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that, he recognizes them right away, which suggests that they have not changed very much. And I kind of read that on multiple levels. Physically, obviously they've aged, but he still knows what they like. But I wonder if it means that they haven't changed internally very much either. That's just a guess. Because they're kind of still having the same old squabbles, especially when Ruben says, "Didn't I tell you?" It's like, come on.
Yep,
How
yep.
many years has this been, to Donna's point? What?
My study Bible notes that the reference to your spies takes us back to when Joseph was spying on his brothers way back when. And
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Excellent. Excellent. What goes around comes around. What do you think about this reference to the nakedness of the land? You have come to see the
Yeah. Mm.
land.
Could it mean that the land is not defended?
Hmm.
Yeah, I took
Could
it to
be.
mean that they're, if Egypt has grain and not enough people to, to defend itself, that
Yeah,
would be
that
that's been the history of humanity. If it's only yours while you can defend it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. I think he's accusing them of representing somebody who wants to plan to make war against Egypt to get the grain.
Mm-hmm. To take advantage of them. Let's just see what the interlinear says.
Undefended.
Yeah, it says undefended.
On. Okay, here we go again. Hang on.
Oh, yeah. Mm. Didn't think of, I thought of it being in the famine, I mean, and the drought, just
Mhm.
being
Barren.
mm.
So,
I did too, thinking that all of their grain was in storage and that they weren't fruitful either. I don't know, but
Mhm.
I,
Not obviously so, yeah.
yeah, not in this.
um, here's the
Then
Hebrew. So, without going into graphic detail, important shameful exposure, exposed. When
Undefended.
when
I
else is
could tell you what the study Bible says about that,
okay?
or if unless you want to discuss it more.
Well, I just wanted to ask a quick question. I wanted to ask when else in Genesis has nakedness been problematic?
Mm.
The
Adam and
banishment
Eve.
from Eden.
Garden of Eden.
Yeah,
Adam and
Looking on
Eve.
the nakedness of their
Eve
father.
or Adam and Eve.
Yeah, Adam and Eve.
Noah, yeah.
Who else? John, I think you said it.
Looking on the nakedness of, was it Noah or the,
Noah.
Noah, yeah.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, so there's this hearkening back to something that's inherently shameful, and it's the beholder who is meant to have shame as well as the one who's exposed. You know, Adam and Eve are shamed because they're naked. God doesn't think that it's shameful, but they do. But with the sons of Noah, they're the ones who have misstepped because they have gazed at the nakedness of their father. So, John, what does your study Bible say?
it basically makes that point. The language of sexual transgression emphasizes their illegitimacy of purpose.
Hmm.
So it's to pick out something that truly is shameful and 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 bad.
So
Hmm.
it's that word just leapt out. Certainly in the
Mhm.
the nakedness of the land. It's like, huh.
I had read it just glossed over it, thinking, well, that refers to the famine and the lack of crops and
That's what I
uh,
thought too.
devastation. And so this is much richer. I'm glad we did that.
Mm-hmm. What else? So, Joseph accuses them of being spies. What about this test that he sets for them?
I
Here's
just
My
think
Doesn't.
it's an exercise in control of the situation. It's like a power play.
hmm
Yeah.
my Bible says, though Joseph claims to be testing whether his brothers are spies, he actually seems to be testing whether they will betray his full brother and father's favorite, Benjamin, the way they once betrayed him.
Oh,
Interesting.
interesting.
excellent.
Hmm.
And the
Well, but
father,
it switches though between his first demand is you all stay in prison, send one back and
yeah,
bring Benjamin, in which case he'd have them all in his power. But later he switches it and says, okay, you all go back and just let me hold Simeon
Mm-hmm.
before you bring
So,
him back. So there's a little bit of a switch in what he is demanding.
I've got Alter in front of me here.
Oh, good.
The test of bringing Benjamin to Egypt is actually a test of fraternal fidelity. Joseph may have some lingering suspicion as to whether the brothers have done away with Benjamin, the other son of Rachel,
Oh,
as they imagine they got rid of him.
interesting.
Interesting.
And of course, Benjamin is Joseph's only full brother, right? Everyone else is a half brother.
Mm.
Joseph and Benjamin are the two sons of Rachel.
uh,
So Benjamin becomes sort of this pawn in this part of the story.
their father also um, fears for Benjamin. It
Hmm.
seems that they haven't changed very much.
It does seem that way, right? Yeah.
Brood of vipers. Yes.
Mhm.
And how about this, where Joseph doesn't let on that he understands what his brothers are saying, and he speaks with them through an interpreter. And I don't want to put too much pressure on it, but I think that's interesting too, because of course he's the one who made his bread and butter and got where he has gotten because he's an interpreter of dreams. And so now there's this whole question of interpretation. Even though he does understand, he uses the interpreter as kind of a smoke shield, a smoke screen.
That would probably be a common power play, even today.
Yeah.
You know, diplomats and whatever, you know,
Mm.
have interpreters to one to make sure nothing goes wrong, but also to, you know, sort of say, I don't have to understand your language almost.
Mhm.
Disguise a position of power.
Exactly. I remember when I was in middle school and high school and starting to study French. And my grandparents spoke French when they didn't want any of us to know it.
Ah,
And so then all of a sudden I started understanding some of the things that they were saying, but it was the same thing. It's like, nope, I'm not going to let on that I
yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I want to find out exactly what Uncle Jim went to prison for.
exactly do tell, you know. But what Ellie just said about disguise is power. I think that's really an interesting comment. Because it does give him the one up. John, were you going to say something?
I was,
Oh,
I
Ray.
was going to, given what we were just talking about, it looks like he's not just toying with, he's after that specific information about the young and full brother. And
Yeah.
the way he's going to get it is by putting the thumb screws to them or putting them in prison, letting their anxieties rule.
Mhm.
But he's not just tormenting them for the sake of playing cat and mouse.
I've got
Excellent.
a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why did he pick Simeon? I can't remember what birth order he is. I think Reuben was
Yeah,
the
I
oldest,
thought that.
and why wouldn't it be Reuben? What is he? The next younger?
Yeah,
I forget
have my
his
study
position.
Bible in front of me. Does anyone have a note on that, or does Alter?
No, I don't.
Ray, does Alter say anything about why Simeon?
Just a second. Unfortunately, my version of Alter here doesn't have chapter and verse marks, so
Okay.
it's a little difficult to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a note on that verse.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I'm looking at altar 2. That would be verse 24, and the only comment on verse 24 is that this is the first of 3 times in a clear crescendo pattern that Joseph is moved to tears by his brothers.
Yeah. So Joseph's affections for them are intact.
Yes, so.
Yeah. And again, he's not just torturing them for his pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he might be having fun too.
I think he probably was. I
I
certainly
think
would
Having
be.
fun, or at least putting them through the ringer for a little bit.
little psychological
Yeah.
manipulation.
Looking at the end where Jacob talks about his sons in the chapter we get to, he says that Simeon and Levi are the brothers who have weapons of violence and are very violent. And
Yes.
I don't know if that comes in or is something that Joseph knows about and a reason for taking him.
What wasn't, now that you say that, John, wasn't Simeon one of the ones who was avenging with the whole Judah and Tamar episode? Wasn't Simeon involved in that? I don't remember, honestly. I
I
should.
don't either.
But now that you say that about the violence, I'm thinking somehow this harkens back to that. When we're done, I'll go back and look at that because I don't want to spend time now doing it. But I think there probably I don't think it's just random that Simeon's chosen. And maybe it is.
Yeah.
But it's like
Simeon and Levi were Dinah's brothers who took their swords and massacred everybody for in in revenge for violating Dinah.
Dinah, yes, I said Tamar. I meant Dinah. Yes.
The end of chapter 34.
Excellent.
Late in the chapter, we have Jacob saying, "Me you have bereaved, Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and Benjamin you would take!" Exclamation point.
Because
It
Simeon's
is
still
I
back in
who
Egypt.
it is I who bear it all.
Hmm.
So
All right. Should we press on, finish this chapter? Would someone like,
Don't you think they might have been suspicious when he gave them the grain for free?
hmm,
well, they
Well, I
didn't
think
know that until they were on the
they
road.
didn't know it.
Oh,
They gave
okay.
orders
I
to fill
thought,
their
and
grains
I thought
bags with
that
grain.
I thought they even got more worried that they thought he had stolen it or they had taken back the money. But if I remember later, they were worried about, are we going to be called out for not having paid for it the first time?
Oh,
Well, that's in our next episode.
yes.
Right.
So you're all reading forward.
Would someone like to read 26 to the end of the chapter? I can just get rid of
Sure.
Oops, sorry. Hang on, Fred. Sorry about that. You're going to read from your version, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll scroll along.
So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to the brothers, "My money has been restored, and there it is in my sack." Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, "What is it that God has done to us?" Then they went to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man who is lord of the land spoke roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, 'We are honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan.' Then the lord of the country, said to us, 'By this I will know you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, take food for the famine of your households, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother to me, so that I shall know you are not spies, but that you are honest men. I will grant your brother to you, and you may trade in the land.' Then it happened they emptied their sacks, and that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, 'You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin. All these things are against me.' Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, 'Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put, put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you.' But he said, 'My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity shall befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave.'"
Fred. Okay. Great exercise in human nature here. What strikes you? Where do you want to start?
Kind of weird to offer the guy, to offer his own grandchildren to him as hostages. Go ahead and kill them, if you
Says a
love
lot about
family
the
so
family
much.
dynamics, right? Exactly. Sounds like an episode of Dallas or something. I don't know.
I thought it was interesting. They find the money, and their first thought is, God has done something to us.
Yes.
These are mystical people.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had that episode today, I think we would have questioned it, but I don't think we would have gone to a spiritual being placing that money in the sacks.
Mhm.
And possible retribution for whatever. Yeah.
Yep. They feel like they're being punished
being set up.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
if they were afraid, why don't they go back to Egypt and say, "Hey, somebody put this money in our sacks.
We
Prove
can't
they're
have this.
honest."
We're fair men. We're traders.
Yeah, we're honest people, and we're not going to take advantage of somebody's screw up.
You forgot to take your money.
Why do you suppose they don't do that? That's a great point.
It's
Yeah.
a long way back. I mean, just
I think the two things. One is the what is this that God has done to us? Could be less that how how did this money magically get back to us, but more what kind of a situation has God put us in where all of a sudden the money that we were going to pay is back in our and we're going to look like thieves, and this is a bad situation that God has put us in. And the reason they haven't gone back is because they don't have Benjamin with them. And if they go back without him, then they don't know what this Lord of the land is going to do to them.
Yeah,
If
there's
they're
no
walking
point going
around
back
with
without
Greg
Benjamin.
and
Right.
money and no brother.
Jackie, were you saying something?
Oh, I just said there's no point in going back without Benjamin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe they mention God because they know that they are guilty. And maybe God is now finally waking up and punishing them after all these years. And if they went back, um, Joseph could say, "Oh, a likely story."
Mhm,
Mhm.
absolutely. So why do you think Joseph doesn't charge them?
you get the family discount.
The friends and family plan, right?
That's right.
Well, I guess my question is it that Joseph is still playing with them and wants them to
I
be,
think so. Mhm.
or is it grace, giving them this out of the kindness of his heart? What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like he's more righteous in a sense, and that he's trying to make it not about the money. There's just heavier family dynamic at play. He doesn't need the money, and his power move is enough with the emotional part. He doesn't need to bring the money into it. But, you know,
Not his money anyways, Pharaoh's
Yeah,
money.
it's not his
Mhm.
money. Yeah.
I can be very generous with Elon's money.
That's a really interesting point, right? Because Pharaoh has entrusted Joseph to manage all this.
Mm, mm.
And I think it's the altar translation back when it says Joseph was governor over the land. It says something about Joseph being the provider. So, this is really I'll say sacred trust, but I don't mean that in the sense that we would understand sacred, but he has been entrusted with the wealth of Egypt, and he is not, he's dispensing of that trust. He's abrogating that trust in a sense. So that's a really good point you made, Fred. It's not his money.
One of the notes in my study Bible points out that the first guy looks in his bag and sees the money, tells his brothers, but then as we go further down, they were too afraid to check whether theirs was there. They didn't know it until they dump it all out in front of Jacob. So that these guys are really spooked about what's going on.
Or alternatively, Alter says that it could be just sort of a little bit of drama. Um, they have already seen that the money's back, but they have to go back to dad and say, "Look, this is amazing," and I'll be surprised at that point.
Hmm. There is certainly a high degree of drama and dramatic irony in this whole story, right? Again, we're watching it on stage. We know who Joseph is. They don't know who Joseph is. We want to say he's standing behind you. So there is a high element of the dramatic in this whole narrative.
And of course, there's Jacob wringing his hands. That it's all about me again.
Boy, is that clear, right? I am the one you've bereaved of children. All of this has happened to me. Well, I think that Joseph and Simeon would say that things have happened to them too, but it's all about Jacob. Yeah.
Oh, that's a point.
And so what is this with Reuben offering his own sons?
He's still feeling guilt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think so too, Elin. But Reuben is definitely wrestling with something here. He's kind of tortured. So again, does Benjamin go? Does Benjamin not go? Again, the son, the youngest son, the son of the favorite wife. There's a lot, he has a lot of cachet.
Great place to break episode 3 before we go on to episode 4.
Well, on that
Stay
note,
tuned.
shall we move on?
Sure.
Sure.
All right. Okay, the brothers come again, bringing Benjamin. Oh, so this whole chapter is really the story. There's no natural break here. Would someone like to read either all or part of chapter 43 for us?
Okay.
Thank you, Ellie. I'll scroll for you. Can you see it?
All
Okay.
right, thanks. Yeah. Now that's fine. There we go. Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they'd eaten up the grain that they'd brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go again, buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' Israel said, 'Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother?'" Me again. They
Did you
replied,
treat
"The
me
man."
so badly?
The man, they replied, "The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' What we told him was in answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Then Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the boy with me, and let us be on our way, so that we may live and not die, you and we, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. You can hold me accountable for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we'd not delayed, we would now have returned twice." Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags, and carry them down as a present to the man, a little balm and a little honey, gum, resin, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned on the top of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also, and be on your way again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he may send back your other brother and Benjamin," whoever he was. "As for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." So the men took the present, and he took double the money with them, as well as Benjamin. Then they went on their way down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph said and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "It's because of the money replaced in our sacks the first time that we've been brought in, so that he may have an opportunity to fall upon us, to make slaves of us and take our donkeys." So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the entrance to the house. They said, "Oh, my lord, we came down the first time to buy food, and when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each one's money in the top of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it back with us. Moreover, we have brought down with us additional money to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." He replied, "Rest assured, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. When the steward had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they would dine there. When Joseph came home, they brought him the present that they had carried into the house and bowed to the ground before him. He inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads and did obeisance. Then he looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." With that, Joseph hurried out, because he was overcome with affection for his brother, and he was about to weep. So he went into a private room and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the meal." They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. When they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him.
All right. Thank you.
Hmm.
Good.
And now everybody's totally baffled.
And Benjamin doesn't notice Joseph, doesn't recognize Joseph in any way.
I don't think so. How young was he when Joseph left?
I think he was pretty young.
Mm.
And again, Joseph looks different. He is carrying himself as an Egyptian. Do you notice anything, any shift in this chapter?
I think it shows the vulnerability, and the other chapter showed the power.
Of Joseph?
Yes. Mhm.
That's a good point.
Well, at the end, it surprises me because Benjamin's portion was 5 times theirs,
Hmm.
and they drank and were merry with him. But it seems like the old brothers would have said, "Well, where's my extra food?"
Mhm.
and been jealous of him.
That struck me too.
The first thing that struck me was they seemed perfectly happy living in Canaan until they ran out of food again. They left their brother hostage, and
Right.
Hey,
Mm,
yes,
mm.
yeah.
yeah, and hey, sorry about that guy, but we're good. We're good here in Canaan, and we're not going back.
But I
Well,
think they
I
were
kept thinking
fearful.
about,
Sorry.
I just said I kept thinking about Simeon, who
Mm.
apparently doesn't know who Joseph is sitting down there. Nobody's coming back. And I mean, there could be a whole little novella, I think, written about Simeon's time there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Simeon must have had some bad nights, wondering if when the time came that they should have been back and weren't,
Mm.
Yeah.
Right.
what's going to happen to him?
Yeah, exactly. Do you notice that the name of the father changes?
Yes.
Israel.
Yeah.
Israel.
Is
Mm.
So and I don't, again, I don't have my study Bible. I'm sorry about that. But for those who have theirs, I'm wondering if there are any notes. This may be, you remember we've talked before about there being different literary strands running throughout Genesis. And sometimes we see pretty obviously where they are, the theme where they are put together. And I'm wondering if this isn't another narrative voice kind of telling the same story, because now the famine was severe in the land. Well, we've talked about the famine before, and this time it's Judah who says he's going to go down with Benjamin, as opposed to Reuben in the last chapter. So I wonder if it's not actually a retelling of the same episode, but by a different part of the tradition. Does anyone study Bible say anything about that?
Mine does not.
No.
Okay. It just is striking to me that Jacob's name, Jacob was given the name Israel some time ago, but we heard it used. But now he's being called Israel. And what's that significance there?
Interesting.
Also, kind of at a meta level, this is looking at Joseph. This is a demonstration of forgiveness
Beautiful.
and for after grave harm. I don't know what more to make of that, but that's the way it strikes me.
Absolutely. He has been given up for dead. He has been betrayed. He has been sold for money. And yet he is able to welcome his kindred, his brothers, back to him and help them.
Yeah.
My study Bible does have a note that about the dinner arrangements and eating shows how far Joseph has come, or how far distant he is from, he's now an Egyptian. He eats like an Egyptian. He is so far away from, the familial relations within his own household.
That's excellent.
Well, he would be breaking Egyptian custom if he ate with them, and that would imperil him.
Well, and also says the birthright, people being served birthright, is Egyptian because, Simeon and Judah were not in good stead in the family. And so that at least that's what the study Bible note says.
Yeah.
That is another indication of the Egyptian customs being forced by Joseph on Joseph and his, acceptance of them.
Excellent.
This is the first time I think I've heard that it was an abomination for the Jews or Israelites, I guess, to eat with, to eat with those who were not of their faith.
Well,
The,
it's
I think
the
it's the other way
Egyptians
around.
would eat with the Hebrews.
Yeah.
yeah, the Egyptians, it's an abomination to the Egyptians to eat with the Hebrews.
But they were eating with Joseph.
No, Joseph was eating separately.
Well,
Yeah.
but I just assumed he would have, by this time, he would have been fitting in.
Well, I've been in places where the custom is for the host to eat separately, believe it or not.
Oh, not seen that.
Serving everybody else first, or just simply eating separately and not being at the table. And that was in Germany. So I didn't know what to make of that, but I still don't. But it's
Certainly the head of the household. We used to have a German family, where I lived. And, when we'd go over to his house, everybody would stand behind their chairs until he came in and sat down.
Yep. I've seen that too.
And at one point there was a little bit of, meat with kind of gristly in it that I didn't really want, and it had on one side of my plate, and he looked over at me and said, we will have dessert after Master Smoke finishes his meal.
Mm.
He will finish it.
You will finish it. You will enjoy it.
That's right. Well, the verses that touch me are 30 and 31. Um, really starting at 29 when he says, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me?" With that, Joseph hurried out because he was overcome with affection for his
Yeah.
brother. He was about that that happens off stage, right? And that's not the first time where his emotions cause him to turn away. So he private room and wept. Then he washed his face, put on his mask again, as it were, and controlling himself, then he took on that role again. So there's this tension here between the real Joseph, the brother, the one who is desperately grieving his family, especially his little brother, and his role that he is inhabiting.
He's really between the rock and the hard place. I mean, it's pretty tough. Now, and I was going to say, my Bible says that the stage is set for a reprise of their murderous envy once shown toward Joseph and now potentially directed at Benjamin.
Ah, yes. Benjamin's portion was 5 times much as any of theirs. And we know that when people are hungry, right? I mean, the whole episode is framed with there was severe famine the famine was severe in the land. So, we start with that. And then we have the little brother who is getting way more than his share at their expense, no doubt. Or certainly, even if they're still being fed, they're not being fed as much as he is. So, here it's ramping up again. That's a great note, Donna. Anything else?
The altar points out or reminds us that Judah was the one who thought of the idea of selling Joseph to as a slave to the caravan in the first place. So now Judah's taking over from Reuben in as a spokesman for the crowd of them.
Excellent. And it is interesting. And of course, again, it's dramatic irony, but it is interesting that not one of them pauses to think, wait a minute, why is this guy treating us this way? And why is he so interested in Benjamin? Doesn't occur to them. And of course it would, but it does occur to us. All right, anything else?
But isn't
Was
that what?
homosexuality proscribed to the Hebrews at this period in time?
Say that again, Fred. Sorry.
Was being homosexual a forbidden activity to the Hebrews of this time?
Who was homosexual though?
Well, they might have thought Joseph was. That's why he's, buttering up one of their brothers.
Oh,
Oh no.
I think that's a stretch.
They hadn't gone there.
Well, we've had, Abraham pimping out Sarah along the way as whenever it was convenient.
Yeah, not his best moment. That's not a good look. As my oldest son will say, yeah, not a good look. Not a good look.
I'm just,
Yeah.
thinking out loud. If I 7 brothers showed up at my house and I started doting on one of them.
Well,
Why
I
wouldn't
think-
they expect it? Their father treats Benjamin obviously favorably, or I mean, he's special in some way.
Yeah.
Why they don't know why he's been given this, I don't know.
Treatment.
This
Yeah.
clutch of 5 or 6 or 7 brothers and sort of in the middle of all of this seemed to be a fairly gormless crowd.
yes, perfect word.
perfect word. I
They
love
They're
kind of
just
staring
trying
at
to
their
get
dad, trying to
by.
figure out what to do about them. Well,
They're
it sounds like
starving to death. Somebody, is making nice to one of them. They just want us to get on board.
Well, they've
they
been
none of
under,
them act independently. They're just sort of this 14-legged creature that kind of toddles around after letting people tell them what to do.
they've been under the thumb of their patriarch this entire time, so
Exactly.
they're not ready to take on anything.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Well,
There's a
they've been
lesson there. There's a
treated as
lesson there too, parents. But
yeah, they've been treated as a kind of a glob, a unit, all of their lives, and then the other sons. So,
they never got to go away to college.
well, exactly.
I mean, that is our rite of passage in this
Yeah,
society
well,
for a certain group, certain class of people. You go away to college where you get to make your mistakes.
or you join the military,
Yeah,
or a good gang, street gang will do it.
yeah. I
or
mean,
in
they
even here in the Bible, they take their patrimony, their fortune, and go off and live in another country or something. Isn't that what who was it? Laban did,
Mhm. So
or
Mhm.
yeah, there's something about the individuation, the
split off from the family.
yeah, the separation, which is a natural psychological and rite of passage, right? To self-identify
Mhm.
that way. But going back to what Donna said before, this group is kind of treated like a bunch of ne'er-do-wells who can't quite figure out how to get out of their own way. And there's food there, go get it. There is something about this clump, as you say. All right, anything else? This is a perfect spot to stop.
well, I just like to, say it when Jacob, who is complaining about how he misses his sons, when they returned back with the food, they all sat around and ate until they ran out of food again before they started to worry about, I mean,
About Simeon. They didn't worry about Simeon
they
at all.
they didn't worry about Simeon until they were out of food again, and then all of a sudden Jacob is, weeping and wailing and tearing his clothes over the fact that he's going to lose another son.
But it's been clear from the beginning that Jacob is not fair-minded. That he liked the
He
youngest
plays
son.
favorites.
Yeah, he plays favorites.
But this was his favorite at the time, and they returned back with him or without him,
Well, he doesn't care
and
about the rest of them.
well, they don't. But he doesn't say, hey, get off your butts and go back to Egypt and show him so I can get my son back.
Well, that's his favoritism.
Well,
Maybe that's what happens when you have a huge family. What's one son more or less?
Well, if you have a beloved wife, Rachel, and you treasure her two children.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
make no
I
secret.
mean,
And make no secret of it. Yes.
yeah.
yeah.
And these are God's favorite people.